We're still in Japan, so the Asian Eastern horror movie today is Noroi, The Curse. It's like a pseudo/fake documentary. It uses found footage styles, so it gives it that charm of being grounded, but not too outlandish. It was hard to find anything about this movie because it barely got a US release a couple years ago on Shudder. Mind you that this movie came out around 2005, but if you haven't seen my last two horror movie vids, check them out. So we'll recap the movie, and then after that give my thoughts as well as some additional information I found, and try to explain some things. It begins with the narrator talking about how Masafumi Kobayashi wrote many books accounting all his supernatural phenomenons since 1995 in the pursuit of a horrifying and unsolvable mysteries, then later started using videotapes instead. After the completion of this documentary, he went missing and his wife died in a house fire. I want the truth, no matter how terrifying. Kobayashi goes to this house to investigate voices this mom, Ryoko, hears. She says that they sound like baby voices and that they're coming from next door. Her neighbor is a woman in her 40s and that she has a boy between 6 and 9 years old. They moved in about a year and a half ago, and that was the only time she saw the boy. She sees the mom occasionally. He goes to the neighbors to investigate more. She opens the door and she starts talking crazy.
なんでそんな言い方ができるんだって聞いてんだよ。
いかがですか。
言い方。
すみません。私小林。
He doesn't get anywhere with this and walks away, but the cameraman catches the boy peeking through the blinds. He got the sounds the mom was talking about analyzed. The expert says that it sounds like 5 or more babies crying. Days later, the neighbor moved out and the strange baby voices stopped. Kobayashi goes next door and grabs her mail, finding out that her name is Junko Ishii. He looks through the yard and finds 5 pigeons dead. It cuts back to the mom, Ryoko, and her daughter, thanking him. However, they died 5 days later. She lost control while she was driving and went into incoming traffic. Now some footage from a TV program that aired. These teen kids have ESP abilities. This psychic Korichi Hiratsu is going to perform experiments on these kids, first being clairvoyance. These containers have a piece of paper with the drawing inside of it. Then they're asked to draw the image on the paper in front of them. After a while, Hiratsu reveals the drawing in the container is a double circle, and each circle has 2 points. One kid got it right, Kana Yuno. She was right on 4 out of the 5 of them, so on the 5th question she gave this drawing. The next experiment is materialization. It's done telekinetically, envisioning water in the bottle. Kana was able to complete this experiment. Looking in, they also see a hair. They did tests on the water and they said it could come from a lake or a river nearby, and the hair in the water came from an animal, but it could also come from a human as well, like a newborn baby. Here's some unused footage of a TV show. The 2 guys are going to this shrine that's popular for ghost sightings, but they brought a guest with them, an actress, Marika Matsumoto. She has 6th sense. Walking towards the shrine, her neck starts tingling. At the shrine, she feels something strange in the direction of the trees. They notice only 2 of these trees are dead, and something is oozing off one of them. She tells them not to touch it and to stay back. She looks frightened. Ask them if they hear that, but they hear nothing. She just describes it as a low voice like a man's. While staring out to the woods, Marika falls to the ground. They were playing this video at some live talk show. Marika and Kobayashi are the guests of the show. Kobayashi asked her about the voice. She said it sounded like it was calling to her, and that when she looked in the direction of the trees, she couldn't remember anything. Now they brought out a man with psychic ability, Matsuo Hori, to examine Marika. He suddenly leaps towards her, yelling, "The pigeons!" While they're dragging him out, he says watch out for the pigeons. Kobayashi is at the TV studio to meet with the director of the show Marika was in. The director explains that he gave Marika the footage. He edited something out so he wouldn't scare her. Kobayashi brings Marika to his office to show her the video.
なんか見えんの?
After watching this, she shows him a drawing of a pattern that she keeps making unconsciously. It started when she went to the shrine. Kobayashi went to Kana's house earlier, but she wasn't feeling well. Now, Kana's fever went down, but she started acting strange, often talking to somebody when no one's there. Kobayashi asks Kana who she's talking to, but she responds, "I guess it's too late for all of us."
もう全部ダメなんだよ。
Later, they're having dinner. Kana drops her spoon. Plates fly off the table.
大丈夫？カナ？カナ？カナ？
They take her to her room. Footage from another show where this woman interviews the psychic man from earlier, Mitsuo Hori, at his house. Hori's wearing all aluminum and lets him in. There's writing all over his house and aluminum foil covering the walls and boxes full with flyers. The flyers contain dangerous information received over the years. He can see the future ectoplasmic worms. The worms are all over, crawling, squirming. Kobayashi is back at Kana's again. We find out that she's missing. A week before she disappeared, a man kept visiting her. He was wearing a hat and a coat covered with aluminum foil. Kana would tell her dad that he was no threat to her, and when she left, they found this flyer in her room saying help, and the pattern we seen earlier from Marika. Kobayashi goes to Hori's house, asks him to help with the research into finding Kana. He covers himself in foil to protect himself from the tingling, because the ectoplasmic worms are near. They eat people and they multiply. Then says that Kana was eaten too. Kobayashi asks where Kana is now, but Hori lost track of her. Then grabs Kana's flyer from Kobayashi's bag. He uses it to draw the place where Kana is, and says a young man, the worms, took Kana away. He gets up and points in the direction of Kana. He begins to panic. The video starts to glitch. Kobayashi goes looking for the place drawn, but in his search, Marika calls him. At Marika's house, she explains that she woke up and she found this yarn here and wool tied into knots with many loops, but she doesn't remember putting them there before she went to bed. She thinks that maybe she did this in her sleep. Kobayashi's solution to this is to leave the camera here and says she'll turn it on before she goes to bed. Later that night, Marika gets out of bed, unplugs the lamp, drags it to her balcony and does something off camera, then returns to bed while loud banging is heard. They watch this the next morning. She doesn't remember anything. The cable to the lamp had the same loops like the wool. They hear banging. Marika says the girl upstairs works in the same agency as her. They go to investigate. They ask Midori, that's the girl's name, if she's banging on the floor, and she hasn't, and that she hasn't heard anything either. Kobayashi found the place. A guy named Osawa lives there. No one answers the door, but he begins to hear banging.
なんか聞こえるな。
Kobayashi goes to the neighbors to ask about Osawa. He explains that he barely started making that banging sound and that he never saw him with the girl. They camp out and they notice pigeons only on Osawa's balcony. Osawa walks out, grabs one of the pigeons, and goes back inside.
出てきた。
A few days later, he vanished. Back at Kobayashi's office, they notice a sound in Marika's video. They get it analyzed and it said Kagugaba. Marika recognizes it as the voice she heard at the shrine, but doesn't ring a bell. Kobayashi starts to call places to find out more about Kakugaba. Then finally one says that he's seen it in a book. Kobayashi heads over. The man begins to talk about the village called Shimokiji that's now at the bottom of a dam. Before the village was destroyed, they did a demon ritual to pacify the demon, and that the demon was called Kagugaba. So in this village they had sorcerers, and that they would summon Kagugaba. However, one time it disobeyed obeyed orders, doing evil things on its own. So they did another spell to seal Kagugaba. Now Kobayashi wants to find out more about the rituals. Before it went underwater, he goes to a local historian and he brings out film of the last ritual recorded. It was contracted by Mr. Ishii, the priest. They watch the tape and adds that the villagers still believe in this sorcery. The sorcerers use dogs in their rituals. Kagugaba is represented with the mask. However, during the ritual, the one playing Kagugaba became delirious, so they had to stop. Later, the villagers said that she was possessed. When the dam was built, the ritual couldn't be performed again, so it angered Kagugaba. Kobayashi wants to meet Mr. Ishii, but he died from an illness, so did his wife. Only his daughter is alive, aka the one possessed in the film. He can find her in the Makeshi community where the villagers moved. She lives with her son. Man, every house has a dog. The woman answers the door.
すいません。
なんでそんな言い方ができるのかと聞いてんだ。
It's the woman from earlier, the crying baby's neighbor. It didn't work out again. Kobayashi begins to ask around. One dude stops talking to him when he brought up Ishii. And the second lady says Junko Ishii, that's the first name, left the village to go to nursing school. It was only after the ritual she started acting weird and that she heard God's voice and that she had to obey his words. Once Kobayashi brings up Kagugaba, she gets up and walks away. Kobayashi goes to her school to ask about Junko. They tell him she worked at a clinic that's closed now. Somehow, Kobayashi found Junko's co-worker and asked her about Junko. The co-worker says the clinic they worked for performed abortions into the 22-week. Junko was in charge of disposing of the aborted fetuses, but rumors say that she took them home. Marika tells Kobayashi that Midori, the girl upstairs, is dead, that she committed the S-word at the park with strangers. Kobayashi moves Marika in his house with his wife. Kobayashi looks through the names of the people who did the S-Pack. One of them was Osawa, the weird pigeon grabbing dude. Kobayashi asks Osawa's neighbor about him. He was a normal dude until he started to argue with the lady who was living next door. Then the lady moved out. The neighbor recalls the arguments being about the baby being too loud, but she didn't have one. Only a boy who was 5 or 6. Kobayashi shows him a picture of Junko. He confirms it's her. Some news footage talks about a businessman who stabbed his wife to death and got arrested. They're the parents of Kana. She's been missing for a year at this point. At Kobayashi's house, Marika and the wife Keiko are about to eat. Marika goes to get something. Marika stands at the doorway groaning.
Marika-chan?
Birds begin to hit the window. She falls down. Marika wakes up. Keiko tells her what happened. Marika checks on where the birds hit. 4 birds are lying dead. Marika, still in shock to what happened, tells Kobayashi that pigeons may be a sign of death. They go to Hori's house to show him the Junko tape. He begins to freak out. Marika tells Kobayashi to take her to the dam where the demon village was because she wants to try to do the ritual herself to see what will happen. He warns her it's too dangerous. Marika tells him that she doesn't want to die, so please. They go to the dam. They bring Hori to help them. Driving through the village, all the dogs are gone. They use the boat to go where the shrine would be at. They get to the spot and perform the ritual. She feels better now. Hori, watching from the bridge, starts yelling at them to come back, get out of there, and say that they need to leave the mountain. Hori runs into the forest, calling out to Kana. Kobayashi chases after him, while the caravan takes Marika down the mountain. Kobayashi and Hori stumble across bodies of dead dogs in a magic field. While driving down the mountain, Marika starts groaning and the cameraman pulls over to check on her. She runs out. Kobayashi and Hori find a shrine. He calls out to Kana. They think that she's under the debris. The cameraman finds Marika laying down, yelling. Kobayashi notices Kana's drawings on the rock. Hori drops to the ground, pointing at something. Marika comes back to her senses. They take her and Hori to the hospital. Kobayashi goes back to Junko's house for the truth. They sneak in through a window. They go upstairs and see Junko hanging. The room is filled with Kagugaba masks. They find the son and Kana, but she's dead. They call the police. Then in the newspaper, the boy we thought was her son isn't actually hers. Kobayashi ended up adopting him. Marika recovered and the supernatural things stopped happening to her. However, Hori was placed in a mental institution. Back at the historian's house, he shows Kobayashi a scroll that shows the ritual to summon Kagugaba. They sacrifice baby monkeys for the medium to eat. Basically, Junko used Kana as a medium, then fed Kana aborted babies so she can resurrect Kagugaba. It's just his theory. Hori escaped from the institution. He was later found dead. A month later, a package was delivered. A camera was inside with the tape. On the tape, Hori shows up to Kobayashi's house holding a rock. He hears Kana's voice in his head saying Kagugaba is alive. Kobayashi is trying to make him leave. Hori rushes inside, hits the boy saying that he's Kagugaba. He killed Kana. Kobayashi tries pleading with him. It's no use. The boy stands up and Kana is behind him. Keiko begins to groan. Hori hits Kobayashi and walks away with the boy, while Keiko pours gasoline on herself, lighting herself on fire. This was 2 days after the Noroi the Curse was finished. Kobayashi's house was burnt down, killing his wife, Keiko, and Kobayashi wasn't found. This movie was great. It had elements that made me love the twin sisters, like the details within the scenes that you don't catch on to until the second viewing, like the pigeons Hori brings up. At the time seemed pointless, but had a place within the story of being a sign for death. Also, the water Kana materialized, and that when they ran the test on it, it explained that it could have came from a lake or river nearby, hinting at the town that was submerged underwater, where they would perform the rituals for Kagugaba. And also the hair within it, saying that it could have belonged to an animal, hinting at the dogs they used for the ritual, or you could even extend it to the monkeys that they used a long time ago, but most likely the dogs because they had it in that village. It was also said that it could belong to a human, most likely an infant, which is kind of giving us a hint to what was going to happen with Kana, with her getting crawled on by these fetuses, right? So while looking for rituals that could have influenced this movie, I came across this article talking about this movie, and it was drawing some similarities to Japanese Mizuko Kuayo, or a water child memorial service. It's a Japanese Buddhist ceremony for those who have a miscarriage, stillbirth, or an abortion. It's performed by a Buddhist priests, and it was used to make offering to Jizo, a bodhisattva. Sorry if I'm butchering these names, right? That who is believed to protect children. Reasons for this ceremony can include parental grief, desire to comfort the soul of a fetus, guilt for an abortion, or even fear of retribution from a vengeful ghost. In Noroi, the children did not find peace. I can see how this ritual may have some connection to Noroi, maybe retribution from a vengeful ghost, hinting at the demon. Maybe I'm digging too deep into this, that perhaps that the fetuses that Junko used was probably just for a scare factor for the movie. Initially, how it said that they used monkeys for this. So I could probably see that. This is kind of a stretch by the article, but it was interesting to talk about nonetheless. So I would rank this movie second, right below A Tale of Two Sisters, right above Audition. But I'll catch you guys later.